Welcome back to our ongoing series, Meeting Jesus. We've been gathering week by week in person for Bible study through the Gospel of Mark and offering these video summaries to catch folks up on what we talk about each time we're together. And as we started our session last time, we finally made it to the end of chapter 4, and at the end of chapter 4 of Mark, Jesus instigates the scene that unfolds in our story for this next time in chapter 5. Jesus tells his disciples, let's go across to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, this big lake. And on one side, you've got predominantly Jewish territory, and on the far side, you've got much, much more Gentile settlements. You've got not only people who'd lived there ancestrally for generations and generations, but you've got Roman colonies and Roman cities, Gentile and Greek cities as well. So to go to the other side isn't just a geographical statement. It's not just let's go from the west to the east or the south to the north. It's got this feel of crossing a pretty important boundary from Jewish territory to Gentile territory. We've already seen in Mark's Gospel how Jesus has become slowly popular enough, well known enough, that word about him is crossing boundaries and people from far away were coming to him. We saw several chapters ago how Mark would say Jesus, operating out of this Jewish community in Galilee called Capernaum, would have people coming from not just around the area but from across the Jordan River and as far south as Jerusalem and from Gentile territories like Tyre and Sidon, from as far south as Idumea. These are all Gentile areas, people coming to meet Jesus. But it's one thing to say, I'm holding court here, and if you come here, I guess I'll grant you an audience. What Jesus proposes as we head into chapter 5 is that he becomes the one. He and his disciples become the foreigners, the ones crossing the boundaries, the one going into other territory. They're the ones who will now be seen as strangers, alien, foreigners on somebody else's territory. And there, when they get to the other side of the sea, they encounter this man who is possessed by, it sounds like, a myriad, countless, many demons, many evil spirits. We've seen Jesus before cast out evil spirits from people right around his community. And we'd seen before, Jesus just says it with a word, right? And even the evil spirits have to obey Jesus. So Jesus sees this man, and his neighbors in his community don't have any way to help him. The best they could do was to restrain him from causing more harm to himself and other people. He will, every time he's riled up by these spirits, he'll tear his clothes and go berserk. So they've chained him up in the graveyard among the tombs. So here's this man who has lost everything, right? His connections with his family, his livelihood, his job, and certainly any respectability or reputation, right? He's just the local crazy guy that they leave out to cause trouble by himself out in the graveyard. And when this guy comes into contact with Jesus, Jesus asks him, "What's your name?" And the demons respond back, "We are legion, for we are many." Legion being like this Roman term for many soldiers, a legion of soldiers. So here there are many demons in him, and Jesus commands the spirits to come out. And the spirits plead with him, "No, we don't want you to destroy us. Let us go into those pigs over there." Now, this is one of those little details that Mark, the narrator, is using to let us know we are definitely in Gentile territory, right? If we were in Jewish territory, nobody's raising pigs, right? That's not kosher. You don't have ham, bacon, pork, none of these things if you're keeping kosher, if you are in a Jewish community. So this is definitely Gentile territory. And for whatever reason, Jesus even allows these evil spirits to go into the pigs. Now, this is one of those weird details that I would love to have a great answer for. One day in glory, I'll find myself asking Jesus, I imagine, why would you negotiate with the demons, right? Why would you let the evil spirits go into the pigs? Don't you care about the pigs? And I think the best answer I can offer is that this is one of those moments where Jesus so clearly cares about the person that he's willing to say, fine, you know what, I'm more interested in the person than in the property, basically, than in the pigs, which, again, are seen basically as a means toward, propagating a farm, right? These aren't not somebody's beloved pets. And that Jesus is more interested, whatever it takes, whatever the cost is fine, save the person, even if that means destruction of property, and so he lets the demons go into the pigs. The demons, now possessing this herd of swine, go leaping off the cliff into the water and drown, and the man now is in his right mind again. So it's sort of a happy ending to that scene, except that when all the townspeople find out what's happened, they come and see both the man who had been their neighbor, their friend, their fellow townsperson, and he's in his right mind, clothed again, but they also see all the property damage, and they want Jesus to leave. This is one of those moments of deciding whose way of doing things you will hold on to, which kingdom or which values will be most important to you, right? So they want Jesus to leave because as far as they're concerned, they had a comfortable gig going. They were willing to write off their neighbor. Hey, look, if the cost of keeping our farms and our lives is that this one guy has to live out there in the graveyard possessed by demons, we'll live with that. He'll be sort of our scapegoat, and we'll at least get to keep peace and order in our community. And Jesus won't make that kind of trade-off. Jesus is always more interested in people than in a comfortable, happier economy, right? Jesus letting the demons go into these pigs certainly has cost the third quarter profits for some farmer or for this community. And Jesus is more convinced that having your neighbor, this person, back to life, being able to go back to his family, that's what's more important. So when the crowds are angry at Jesus, it reminds us there's this sharp difference of values. Jesus always thinks people are more important than profits. Jesus always thinks that the livelihood and well-being of people thriving is more important than making a bigger buck. And so Jesus says, if I got to make the choice, I'm going to pick the person rather than letting these swine be sold to market and make somebody else more money. It seems to me this is a moment to remember that when people accuse Jesus of being a troublemaker, they're not wrong. Where Jesus goes, he upsets the established order of things and brings in a different set of values, a different set of priorities, and that's always going to put the importance of people and their thriving over somebody making more money or a bigger buck, and even over our comfortable order of things that lets us forget about, well, for example, this guy who's possessed by demons. That's the thing, right? In that community, everybody else has sort of figured out, well, you know what, we can get by, and as long as we don't think about that guy that we make live out in the graveyard, we can have a comfortable life. We just sort of push him off to the side, to the margins. He'll take care, he'll absorb all the demons, they'll entertain themselves by just tormenting him, and we'll get our lives and we can be comfortable. Jesus is not okay with that kind of arrangement where some people can do well as long as they push somebody else to the side and they don't have to think about them. This is how Jesus does things. He upsets those kinds of orders. And so in this story, Jesus sort of compels not just the people there in the scene on the far side of the sea, but us reading to decide what's going to matter to us. Are we going to follow Jesus' set of values, Jesus' kind of priorities, which always says the thriving of people matters more than making a bigger buck or having a comfortable arrangement where just a handful of people have to suffer and we just don't think about them? Which will be our way of life? Jesus calls us over and over again to follow his way, his set of priorities. And that sort of comes to the fore in the final part of this story, where after Jesus has sort of been ushered on his way by the crowds, the man who had been possessed by all these evil spirits comes to Jesus and wants to follow him. And Jesus says, no, go back to your life, right? Go back in the time. You get your life back. That's what this is all about, right? I'm not here just to recruit and drum up more numbers for my team. Part of what the demons had cost this man was that he lost his connection to his family and his job and his neighborhood and his community. And Jesus says, no, go back. If you want to be a part of what I'm up to in the world, go tell people how much God has done for you. But go back to your life. And so, as Mark notes, he goes back to his life and tells everybody what Jesus had done for him. Again, it's this sort of subtle note Mark's giving us of wherever Jesus is, God is, right? Jesus has said, go tell people what God has done for you. And the man goes and tells people what Jesus has done for him. Wherever Jesus goes, he brings the very presence of God. We saw that last time when Jesus does things that only God can do, right? Speaking to the wind and the waves, and the disciples are left scratching their heads going, who is this who can command the wind and the waves? Well, any first century Jewish person who's grown up hearing the Psalms, only God alone is the one who speaks to the wind and the waves and they obey him. So here we have Jesus as the one who crosses into foreign territory, also as the embodiment of God's presence crossing those boundaries. Once again, we get a picture not just of Jesus as somebody who's willing to cross those lines, those imaginary lines that we humans draw, But in Jesus, God is the one crossing those lines, reaching across. Anytime we draw a line and say, God's only on our time and on our side and not on your side, God almost takes it as a personal dare and says, no, oh, you just watch me, and crosses those lines and includes and heals and brings to life the people on the far side of the line, on the other side of the sea. So, the question for us, where we are 2,000 years later, is where's Jesus leading us? Where are the times when we're called to cross those boundaries that other people refuse to question anymore, that everybody else has gotten comfortable with just assuming, yep, those lines are there, and those people over there are unacceptable, we don't associate with them, they're not worthy, they're not our kind of people. Where's Jesus leading us, like gathering the rest of the disciples and saying, let's go across to the far side of the sea, knowing exactly what we're getting ourselves into. It's worth remembering, Jesus doesn't accidentally end up on the far side of the sea, blown across the sea because of the storm or the wind or the waves. Jesus had set a course, telling his disciples, let's go there. Jesus knows exactly what he's in for and leads his disciples to be a part of that too. As we continue to work our way through the story of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, we're going to keep finding a Jesus, a God who crosses boundaries and leads us to go with him. We invite you to be a part of that ongoing conversation as we meet week by week in person, 1 o'clock at Community of Christ, or catch up online with these video summaries. Hope you'll join us here in the future as we continue meeting Jesus.